Hello. So today I'm going to be talking a little bit about piano basics for singers. This is really specifically so that you can feel a little bit more independent in your own practice life. Sometimes I hear from folks that yes, working with a lesson recording is very useful in repeating exercises from the last lesson and in hearing feedback again, but sometimes we just want more independence. We were like, oh, really want to do that thing or this thing, or I need an extra moment here, or I don't need an extra moment here. So that can become a little bit tedious. Same thing with following like YouTube videos, right? A lot of people turn to the internet to find different, I don't know, videos to follow along with. That is really useful, except that it is not specific to your voice and it is not specific to the goals that you are working on. This is about helping you become really independent practicing. So, this is not to make you become a pianist. You don't have to be a piano player. It is really just about some very basic skills on the keyboard that you could follow to help guide your own session. And no, you don't need to buy a fancy keyboard or a piano. I'm going to show you some other tools you can use, but this is just kind of an entryway into like what in the world all of this is. Okay, that's a lot of talking. So let's just jump in here. So if you have never really looked at a keyboard before, it can be a little daunting. Lots of notes here, many keys. We've got black keys, we've got white keys. They are all over. They go much lower than their voice. They go much higher than your voice. That's fine. So what's gonna happen is I'm gonna ask you to kind of notice this pattern. What do we see here? We see a 2Z. Then we see a 3Z. Nope, sorry. Wrong 3Z. 3Z, 2Z, 3Z. What a dream. That is a pattern to help you orient on the keyboard. Take any 2Z. And if you slide off to the lower side, for me that's to the left, that's going to be a C, no matter where you are. It could be here, that's a C, that's a C, just different C's in the voice. We're going to try to take the one that's right smack dab in the middle of the piano to get our bearings. You can't see my whole keyboard, but this is in the middle. Ish. It sounds like this. This is a C4. We call that a C4. It's in the fourth octave. If you want to double check that, you could use an app like a pitch app on your phone, which I will show you in a little bit. And you can play a note. And if it says C4, yes, that is your middle C. If it says C3, you're too low. If it says C5, you're too high. Anyways, here we are. This is a C4 for most estrogen dominant larynxes. I'm going to start most of my exercises, especially if it's pretty rangy, 5 notes below that, 5 white keys below that C5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's where I'm going to start warm ups. If you are a testosterone dominant larynx, I might start you 8 notes under or an octave down on that C3. Regardless, the same thing will apply. So let's just say we're going to try to create a very simple pattern for us to lead ourselves in a warm up. So you've got your C4, you counted down 5 white keys to that F3, and just leaving our hand here, we can find a nice pattern. You could do this on any kind of sound you wanted. And then I'm going to move both of my fingers up to their nearest neighbor. That's half a step, half a pitch. And we're gonna do and keep moving up. Everything parallel, right? So we're going up, we're going up. At a certain point, you'll be like, oh, interesting. My thumb is on a black key. My pinky is on a white key. No big deal. That's fine because you're still moving up in that like one neighbor to neighbor to neighbor. And then it'll flip. Oh, look. And then we're back to whites and blacks, white, black, white, etc., etc. You can move from kind of a comfortable low note in your warm up through what might be kind of just like a stretchy, slightly dynamic high note that feels good and comfortable to you, and then do the whole thing back down again. It is really worthwhile to go 2 directions because you'll just notice that the voice manages shifts in a different way when we're going up than when we're going down. So both ways. Okay, so that is orienting ourselves. Now, if you have a lower voice, yeah, start here. Same thing applies. No big deal. It's about finding what works for your voice. Um, Now, let's talk about some things you might notice as you're exploring the voice and be able to kind of pinpoint on the piano. Again, I'm going to go back to this starting at F to C. I might be singing ah, 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 ah. You're noticing that I'm entirely in chest voice at this time. This is in my kind of normal chest voice world, which for next to all singers is going to take you up to about this E flat. So you got that middle C, you got your 2Z, it's that upper E flat or an E somewhere in here is going to be your passaggio. It's going to be your passageway from chest voice into head voice. You will just notice something going on here. Just observe. Notice how it falls on the piano. Notice how it falls on your voice. Great. Something shifting. Ah, ah. Moving to head voice, or maybe I'm belting, but whatever. Ah, ah, ah. Great. All of this is great. We're moving up, 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 up. You're going to get to this next kind of E flat E place here. It's another passaggio. If you're using a full head voice, that is going to be the time where we're going to start most likely dropping the jaw to create more space to allow you to keep going higher. So here is another landmark. Again, just notice this in your voice. What feels different when you get to this E flat up here, or the E, or the F? It's kind of slightly different for different people, etc., etc., etc. Now, that's all great. Now, what if I were taking a mixed voice up instead of going from chest voice to head voice? Let's say I'm mixing. Ah, ah. We're still going to notice some shift around this E. Just notice. Ah, ah. I'm really getting into a mix now that I'm over that E flat E gate. Ah, ah, ah. Ooh. For a lot of folks, this A flat is the middle of our 3Z, or the A becomes another point of interest. Just notice how your voice feels at this point. For a lot of folks, that's where we lighten up our mix. We kind of move from a mix 1, if you will, into a mix 2. Just notable. Ah, ah, ah. Then look at this. Ah. This C right here, that's the C5, this C above middle C, becomes another interesting pivot point for a lot of singers where we get into a more twangy mix, et cetera, a more head dominant mix perhaps. Another place just to notice how your voice is handling that. The reason that I'm pointing out these landmarks is that when we're singing, we certainly feel these pivots, these little moments of shift. And it can be really useful to have a visual for them. To be like, okay, as I come here, I should prepare. I should know something's coming. As I'm here, I need to be thinking about a potential shift. Eventually, we don't want to have to think about it, right? We want to have it so internalized in the body that we begin to lighten up, that we begin to allow a lighter mix or a slightly less muscular situation to come in here. But again, it gives you this visual for these feelings inside and how they are mapped out kind of on a pitch registration landscape. Now, if you are a testosterone influenced larynx, you are going to also deal with some lower shifts, right? So let's say we're down here on a C3. Can't sing slow, sorry. You might notice that somewhere around an E flat, you're either moving into your favorite part of your voice or you're moving out of your favorite part of your voice. Just an interesting moment to notice. Do we have to lighten chest voice at all to get really free sounds in here? Maybe. Listen to your body there. We are also going to start potentially noticing when we hit the C4 that hey, we're heading towards that passaggio. Some other lightning and shifts. We can still be in a pretty chesty voice here, but maybe a lighter chest voice to kind of keep us flowy and moving here. When we get to this E flat, all the same stuff applies, right? We've got a pivot, we are potentially moving into falsetto, or we are going to come into a mixed voice, and then all of this other landmarks along here are the exact same. There's just more down below. So those are some important landmarks to look at. Now, let's say we get bored of this 1-5-1 pattern. We do a lot of 1-5-1s in my studio. You can just shift the pattern, right? You could do a full octave, and it's going to be those 8 notes. So from C3 to C4, and then jump everything up. You do a lot of slides on these octaves, your NG slides. All really great for this. You're covering more range, so you get to notice more of those landmarks in the voice. And then the last thing we will kind of look at before I show you some tools you can use are just like a basic triad. This is our basic 1-3-5 pattern. So we're gonna go back to our middle C, or if you are a testosterone influenced larynx, you can go to that C3 down here. So C4, if I didn't say that right before, that's sorry, we're at C4, middle C. Now I want you to find all white keys, 1, 2, 3, middle finger on that 3, 4, 5. Here we go. Something like that's our major triad. 1, 3, 5, 3, 1, E, ah. This is another pattern that we use a lot in the studio just to keep moving the voice around. Let's say we want to then move this. Every finger is going to go to its, I'm going to go down for a change. Every finger is going to go half a step to the left. That means its nearest neighbor. My thumb going to this little white key. My middle finger going to this black key. My pinky going to this black key. I have another major triad. Now it's B major. Ah, every finger move to your left, just to the neighbor. Ah, great. Ah, great. Now you've got a major triad that you can also do. How exciting. These are some basics that will help you move across the keyboard and just different patterns to help you do exercises or work on whatever your goals are. I was gonna say something else, but it is just like absolutely left my brain right now. Oh yeah, like if you don't even want to get this fancy, just hit a note. Ah, you can figure out like what was my top note there? Oh, it was here. Ah, ah, ah. There's an octave. Ah. Etc., etc., etc. So, anyways, this thus ends very basic piano keyboard skills. Please shoot me a message if you have questions about this. A lot of people put stickers on their piano when they're learning, like, oh, C4, and write it right here, and D and E, just so you have some awareness around that. But what is important is that you are noticing consistent places where there are shifts in your voice, and you are beginning to internalize those so that you're preparing for the moment, and so that in the future you don't have to think about it because your body's just like, as I'm coming up, I do this light shift and we keep going. Anyways, I'm going to pause here and then I'm going to come back and show you some different tools that you can use to, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Do this. Okay, we're gonna start with the the freest version of this because you really don't need to invest in lots of stuff to self-guide your practice with the keyboard. I have downloaded an app called Piano. It was free. Look at that. It's a piano. And you know what's great about this one too? It shows you things like, oh, C5. You really can't see this. Sorry. It's okay. Believe me. It says C5 there. Ooh. And I assume I can move up or down so I can see. Yes, so this little slider will move my piano down so I can see, oh, there's my C4. Great. All of these things apply. You can do C4, G4, C4, and then sing ah. Go one guy to the right. Ah. Sorry, I'm not great at this. Ah, this gives you everything you need to self-guide your practice. You too can use this little tiny keyboard. So that's one option. Here's the next option. This is something that I do when I travel. I have this teeny tiny little keyboard. It is a MIDI keyboard. I plug it into my computer and I use GarageBand to be able to hear sound. That is if you have a Mac. Look how teeny tiny it is. You're not going to hear sound from this because it's not plugged into my computer right now, but I can just totally works. I think this was $30. And it's everything that you need. Plus, then you can become like a music producer on like Ableton or something. That is totally an option. I'm gonna put a link in the YouTube comments here for a similar thing. This one, I don't know, it's like not available right now. But it's very similar one is. That is so little, you can throw it in a bag. It's great. You could also buy yourself like a $50 just cheapo keyboard. I'm gonna put this link also in. It is probably for kids, but who cares? It will get the job done. It gives you a few more keys. Makes you feel a little bit more like you're playing the piano. But again, this is not fancy. It's not a good keyboard. It will not sound like beautiful piano playing, but it sure will help you guide your own practice and give you kind of a map of where things are in that visual landscape of the keyboard. Or like, my keyboard is it's fancy. It's an expensive keyboard. You could get a many $1,000 keyboard as well. But I would really only do that if you really want to become a piano player or a voice teacher. So those are all easy ways to engage in this. And there was one other thing I was going to show you, which is, I mean, I've said it so many times, this Pitch app. Again, free app. I downloaded it. It's both on Google Play and on the App Store. It is called Pitch. It looks like that. It's got that little, like, I don't know, whatever, infinity-ish sign. And I can just check what pitches are happening. So I can play that. If I'm like, oh, is this the middle C? It says C4, so it is. Also very useful when you're really struggling to hit a note in a song and you want to know if you're nailing it or not. I use the Pitch app a lot in my studio. Actually, I'm gonna do an Instagram or TikTok reel on the apps that I use in the studio. So check that out in a week or two. But that is Keyboard for Basics. Man, if you watched this whole thing, good for you. I hope that you have a great time with self-guided practice. And I am here for your questions and I am here for support. So happy self-guided practice. Bye.